The series begins in Bursa, Turkey, with a family of 4, the father and mother, along with their children. We learn that they are an unhappy family, especially the mother, who is always preoccupied with herself and her beauty, neglecting her home and children. This has led her children to always feel motherless, as she never cooks for them at home like other mothers, nor does she embrace them or drop them off at school. She is always sleeping, crying, and depressed because she loves her lover and wants to run away with him. Indeed, one day she decides to leave her home and children, run away with her lover. At that moment, the father begs her not to leave, but the mother is harsh and indifferent. She pushes the father to the ground, and her lover, who is even harsher and more unjust, hits the father with a pen in front of his children. The mother gets into the car with him, ignoring her son as he pleads with her not to leave. When the son returns home, he sits eating the last meal his mother had made, crying and devastated. Months pass, and he is still waiting for his mother to return. One day, when he returns from school, he finds his father has committed suicide, holding a picture of his mother with her lover, clearly showing she is pregnant. He understands that this is what drove his father to despair and suicide. At that moment, feelings of anger, grief, and vengeance overwhelm him. He goes to the house where his mother is staying, continues to knock on the door while distraught, and when her lover opens the door, he pulls out a knife, stabs him with it, and kills him. His mother comes out at that moment, sees what has happened, cries out, and slaps her son. She curses him to live miserably all his life and to be deprived of love, just as he deprived her of her love. At that moment, the mother becomes an enemy to her son. Years pass, and the son grows up to be wealthy and influential. He goes to a private forest he owns, which has a hidden well. When he opens it, we discover that he is raising snakes. Suddenly, he finds a girl practicing archery nearby. We learn that her name is Diva. She is standing near the shore, and as soon as he approaches her and asks her how she entered his land, she gets scared and warns him that she will shoot him with an arrow. However, due to her fear, she accidentally shoots the arrow, but it hits the tree behind him. Then he approaches her, grabs her by the arm, and threatens to throw her into the sea. The girl pleads with him to let her go because she is afraid of water, so she struggles, and he releases her. He continues to watch her with admiration, gets lost in her beauty. At that moment, the girl slaps him, and in his anger, he decides to throw her into the sea. He takes her arrow, gets in his car, and leaves. When Diva returns home, her mother is startled to see her wet and disheveled. She tells her mother that a very strange man attacked her suddenly because she was standing on his land, and he decided to punish her by throwing her into the lake. Diva is wearing the jacket of the man who left it for her before she left. When her mother sees the jacket and notices the initials of the man's name on it, she is shocked, becomes anxious, because she realizes that Diva's mother is actually the mother of the man who threw Diva into the lake. At that time, the man arrives at his home, which is a large palace. He is greeted by his sister, who is very happy and delighted to see him return from his travels. It is noticeable that the man and his sister treat their servants as if they were family. During lunch, the man mentions that he passed through the forest and found a strange girl there, indicating that the land is not as secure as he had requested. He asks his close friend and right-hand man to handle the situation personally. Afterwards, the man sits alone with his friend and reveals that he has taken over all the factories and companies that belonged to his mother's lover, except for the sewing workshop. His mother had raised the daughters of the sewing workshop owner as her own, so she would never agree to give the workshop to anyone else. However, the man tells his friend that he will take the sewing workshop by force if necessary. At the same time, Diva is sitting in her room, sad, and her sister comes in to ask her about the dress she will wear at her henna party. She notices that Diva is distracted and not happy. She approaches her and asks if she is hesitant, does not want to get married. Diva is surprised by her question, tells her that her fiancé is a good man whom any girl would wish for. Her sister tells her that this is not enough and that love is definitely more important. She feels that Diva is hesitant and scared because she does not look happy like any bride. Diva then confesses that this is the first time she feels orphaned because she wished her mother were there. Her sister feels sorry for her and tries to comfort her, letting her know that she is there for her. Diva tells her that she has never felt motherless because of her, besides the upbringing they received from their mother, who made her home their home. At that time, we see the son of the mother, who is sitting in a wheelchair. He suddenly smells something delicious cooking and is surprised to find his mother in the kitchen cooking herself. He immediately goes to her and tells her that he cannot believe she is standing in the kitchen and cooking by herself. She tells him that the dish is not for them, but is being prepared for a specific person to welcome him and celebrate his return. At the same moment, the man is sitting with his sister and tells her that their mother is living in wealth and luxury and has become a prominent socialite with many friends. She is also known for her philanthropy and her care for orphans. His sister then asks him to consider their mother as dead, to forget her and live their lives. This infuriates the man greatly, and he reminds her that he has been waiting for this moment of revenge for 24 years. His sister asks him fearfully if he plans to kill their mother. He replies that death would be a mercy for her. What he plans is far worse than her death. She will wish for death herself. At the same time, one of the servants enters and hands the man a plate of food that his mother sent. Both he and his sister are shocked, and his sister asks the servant to throw the plate in the trash. However, the man refuses, causing his sister and the servant to fear that the food might be poisoned. He yells at them loudly and sends them out. He then sits down to eat from the plate while collapsing and crying. Suddenly, he finds a note in the middle of the food that reads, "Welcome to hell." The next day, Diva is sitting in her father's sewing workshop when the man suddenly enters. She is very scared and shocked. He is surprised to find that she is the same girl from the lake. She tells him that this is her workshop. He asks her if she's the daughter of the famous tailor, and Diva is surprised that he knows her father. As he approaches her, she threatens him with the scissors she is holding. The man is not afraid and tells her to kill him if she is scared. Diva asks him what he wants from her so he will leave her alone. He informs her that from today, they will be working for him. She is shocked by his statement and tells him that the sewing workshop belongs to their mother, but the man tells her that was in the past, and now the workshop will be his. Diva yells at him that she will not work for anyone, and the workshop will not belong to anyone but their mother. He laughs sarcastically at her words, because once she knows the amount of money he will offer her, she will agree to his proposal. Diva angrily tells him that she does not sell herself or her principles for money. It also tells him that it is clear his mother did not teach him values or principles. This angers the man greatly, to the point that Diva becomes very scared and throws him out. He tells her that in 3 days, she will come to his house and beg him to protect her. Diva is puzzled by his words and does not understand what he means. At that time, she is sitting in her office, shocked to discover that her company has been supplying goods to his companies for the past 10 years, and they have only found out about it today. Her assistant tells her that there has not been a single document in those 10 years that mentioned his name. She becomes infuriated because it means they have been indebted to him all this time without her knowledge. Her assistant surprises her by revealing that most of the town is in debt to him, as he has bought up most of the properties and factories. He assures her that with good planning, they can easily take him down. She declares that the war has already begun. Meanwhile, his sister is in the bathroom of the house feeling sick. A servant knocks on the door worriedly. When his sister comes out, she argues with the servant because she is tired of people questioning her whenever she feels ill, as if she has no right to be unwell. Just then, her trusted friend and confidant comes and, noticing her agitation, speaks with her privately. She asks him to do something for her, something to remain a secret between them. He tells her he would do anything for her. She then requests that he keep an eye on someone for her. That night, her confidant calls her to inform that he has found the person she was looking for. When she asks him to send her the address so she can go there, he refuses and tells her it is not appropriate for her to come. At the same time, we learn that the person she is looking for is her rival's fiancé, who is currently at her rival's house for the fiancé's pre-wedding henna ceremony. He looks at her and embraces her, very happy. Suddenly, he receives a message from his sister, telling him she is outside waiting for him. If he doesn't come out, she will expose him. He goes out to her, very afraid and tense. They step aside to talk. She angrily asks him why he is here, as she has been calling him repeatedly, and he hasn't been responding. She is bewildered by how he could forget everything that happened between them. He sarcastically replies that there was nothing significant between them, and that the night they spent together was just a fleeting moment because he was drunk and not in his right mind. She is shocked by his words, telling him that night meant everything to her. He asks her to forget anything between them because he is getting married tomorrow, loves his fiancée, and will not leave her. At that moment, she shocks him by revealing she is pregnant with his child. He is stunned by this news, and so is her confidant, who overhears the conversation and decides to call his brother to come. He tells her he does not want the child and must get rid of it, taking out his wallet and offering her money to go away. At the same moment, his rival steps outside the house to get some fresh air and tie red ribbons on the trees, making wishes. Suddenly, she sees him approaching from a distance. Frightened, she hides behind a tree because she thinks he is coming for her again. Unfortunately, she makes a noise with her feet, and he spots her and asks if she was following him. She mocks him, reminding him that this is her home, and he is the one who has come to her. However, he provokes her by saying she is not important enough for him to bother himself with her. She leaves him and returns to the house. At that moment, his confidant calls him urgently to come. When he arrives and she sees him, she becomes frightened and stands in the middle of the street. Just then, a car comes and hits her. He rushes to her, terrified, while the other man runs away. He takes her to the hospital, extremely worried and distraught, and his confidant tries to calm him down. At the same time, a man is sitting with her, informing her that he had been at the sewing workshop, talked with the girl, and somewhat frightened her. She reassures him that she will keep him away from all of them. Later, her assistant goes to her, informing her that her daughter had an accident in front of the house. In the hospital, he argues with his confidant because he wants to know what his sister was doing at their mother's place. He tells him that she was there to meet a man, which shocks him. He demands all the information about this man by morning. That night, the fiancé is in his apartment, very very anxious and sends a voice message to the girl, apologizing for leaving the henna ceremony abruptly. Suddenly, someone knocks on the door, and when he opens it, he finds a stranger, one of his captor's men, who then kidnaps him. The next morning, the fiancé is brought before him, and he tells him that he is the brother of the girl he hurt and used. He tells him that his sister is not a disposable object and offers him two choices: marry his sister in a proper manner or be thrown off a mountain. Shocked, the fiancé is forced to agree to marry her. Later, in the hospital, when his sister regains consciousness, he reassures her and tells her he knows about her and the fiancé. Just then, the fiancé enters her room, apologizes for what happened, and expresses his desire to marry her because he loves her. He has the wedding ring with him and presents it to her, making her very happy. Then he is sitting with the servant, discussing his sister's wedding, which is to happen that day. The servant mentions that his sister is unwell and needs to rest, but he explains that he cannot trust the fiancé as he might run away at any moment. At the same time, the girl is in a hotel preparing for her wedding, anxious and puzzled because the fiancé's phone has been off since yesterday and he has not arrived yet. As night falls, her anxiety increases because he still hasn't appeared and his phone remains off. Her father tells her that he has searched everywhere for him. He is nowhere to be found. Nobody has seen since yesterday. She becomes upset, irritated, bewildered by his sudden disappearance, suspects that something might have happened to him. Her father leaves to continue the search for him. After a while, one of his men arrives with a message from him for her. When she opens it, she learns that her father is with him and he is asking her to come to him. Without thinking, she decides to go to him with his man and tells her friend not to call the police because she doesn't know what might happen to her father if she does. At the same time, the groom and his bride are writing their marriage contract and he blesses their marriage, warning the groom never to upset his sister. He informs them that they will be traveling to Istanbul together that night. The groom is shocked but too afraid to speak up. Then his men arrive with her father. Seeing him beaten and disheveled, he becomes very angry and distressed. Her father tells him that he knows he owes him money and that all the rough treatment was unnecessary because he would have paid his debt gradually. He tells him that his daughter will come and settle the debt. Her father is shocked and tells him to stay away from his daughters because they have nothing to do with their dispute. At the same time, she is at the grave of the man she had been protecting all these years because of him. She admits that she has protected her all these years for his sake, but now she is forced to hand her over to his greatest enemy so that she can learn what love means, and that when someone loves, they are ready to give up everything and everyone, even their own children and their soul. When he falls in love with her, she will take her away from him just as he once broke her heart and killed her only true love. Then she arrives at his house and hears her father calling for help. She searches for him until she finds him locked up. She looks for anything to help free him, but is startled when she finds him standing in front of her. She collapses on him and argues with him, calling him heartless and merciless because her father is elderly and cannot endure imprisonment. He informs her that her father owes him a debt that he has not been paying for years, and to let him go, he will take her in his place. She is shocked by this. He continues and tells her that she will also kneel before him, begging him to take her instead of her father. She immediately does so without thinking because her only concern is her father's well-being. This touches him and he tries to help her up, but she yells at him not to touch her. At that moment, he orders his men to take her father outside and let him go. She tells him that there is a law that will protect her. He informs her that he is the law and takes her phone. She asks him when he will let her go. He tells her that he will not let her go until he dies. At that moment, she vows to him that his death will be by her hands. He then leaves her and walks away. At that time, his confidant gives a new mobile phone and SIM card to him, telling him that everything old will be buried. He becomes very upset because he wants to use his mobile phone to send a message to someone to reassure them about his safety, as surely everyone is looking for him and worried. His confidant allows him to send just one message, then takes the mobile phone back. Later, his men let her father go, warning him that if he informs the police about his daughter's location, he will never see her again. After they leave, her father wanders around the house calling for his daughter. At that time, she hears his voice and calls out to him too, but suddenly she realizes that he is standing next to her, holding her mobile phone that is ringing. At that moment, he sees a message from her fiancé telling her that he left against his will. She talks to him, assuring him that the police will surely find her location and that her fiancé will come to rescue her. He mocks her words, telling her that her fiancé is already dead. She is shocked by his words and collapses, screaming and accusing him of being a killer and without mercy. He then leaves her there and walks away. At that time, the maid is worried about what is happening. Another maid tells her that since he brought the girl home, he must like her, and senses that this girl will be the reason for his change. At that moment, he enters the room. One maid asks him why he kidnapped the girl, and when he plans to release her, he becomes angry and tells her that no one is allowed to question him. Frightened, the maid falls silent. At the same time, she goes to the hotel, takes her son and another person, and informs them that there will be no wedding. They are shocked and want to know what is happening and where her father and sister are. She reassures them that they are safe, but that her fiancé left her and ran away away because he did not want to marry her. They are shocked, and one of them insists that this could not happen because her fiancé loves her deeply and was eager to marry her. However, she informs them that her fiancé married someone else that night. Suddenly, she receives a call informing her that her men report that her father's house and the sewing workshop have been burned down. This news shocks her greatly. She rushes to the sewing workshop and sees it burning before her eyes. Devastated by what is happening, she breaks down completely. She tries to comfort her, and at that moment, she looks at her assistant, and we discover that it was her assistant who burned the house and the sewing workshop on her orders. The maid goes to her to give her some water to drink, but she begs the maid to help her escape because he is a killer who killed her fiancé. The maid is shocked by her words and insists that he would never do such a thing. She becomes angry with the maid and asks her if she had a daughter, would she accept her being imprisoned like her right now? The maid becomes uneasy and leaves her alone. Afterward, the maid goes to him to talk, having heard her father calling for his daughter outside the house. He tells the maid that her father is ready to sacrifice his life for his daughter and has not left her behind to continue his life as usual. The maid tells him that it is not normal for the girl to remain imprisoned. He then reveals that he will release her from confinement only when she agrees to stay with him willingly, as he is not prepared to be rejected again. He shares that his rejection issues stem from his mother's rejection when he was a child. The next morning, the maid discovers that her father is still in front of the house, crying and calling out for his daughter. She goes to talk to him but is shocked by his appearance, and he is also shocked to see her. It seems they know each other. At that moment, he faints and collapses to the ground. The maid calls his men to inform them of what has happened. At the same time, he is trying to convince her that her father has left her and abandoned her. However, she does not believe him. She finds a small glass shard on the ground and tries to attack him with it, but he stops her and the glass pierces his hand. Meanwhile, her friend is sitting, crying and upset, along with her brother and their mother. She tells their mother that she is sure he has done something to her and her father. However, their mother reassures her, explaining that he wants her and had intentionally set fire to the house and sewing workshop so she would have nowhere else to go. Her friend is confused by her words. Their mother tells her that he is in love with her and will not let her slip away no matter what happens, which is why she is confident that her and her father are safe, knowing who he is and that he had disappeared but has now returned. She asks her mother to talk to him to release her father and sister. Suddenly, his assistant whispers to their mother that her father has been hospitalized, which alarms her. Meanwhile, he is punishing two of his men because they beat her father while bringing him in. He tells them that they should not have harmed a weak, elderly person and that they should only follow his direct orders. He unleashes his fierce dogs on them to attack and punish them as they had mistreated him and hospitalized him. From the window, she watches this happen, unable to hear what he is saying, becoming more frightened and disdainful of him as she sees him torturing his men and setting his dogs on them. In the hospital, her friend learns that she cannot see her father right now because visits are forbidden until he is out of the intensive care unit. However, their mother pleads with the doctor to let her friend enter to see her father for just a minute. When she sees her father, she starts crying and breaks down from grief. At that moment, her brother is very angry with their mother, puzzled by her calmness and silence after everything that has happened. She explains to him that the police won't do anything and that making a fuss will only complicate matters further. Meanwhile, he is in a luxury clothing store, asking the store manager to bring everything a woman would wear and need. The manager asks him to describe her skin tone, hair color, and body size. He begins to describe her beauty without realizing it, speaking about every detail of her appearance. Everyone understands that he is infatuated, and his confidant laughs, visibly happy that he has fallen in love. Afterward, the maid of their mother calls him and tells him about the previous day's events, including that their mother said that the house and sewing workshop were burned down and that they were the ones who burned them. He is shocked by this news and learns that their mother is now in the hospital with her children. He tells the maid to keep him updated on any new developments and ends the call. He then asks his confidant to prepare a nice trip for her since she must be tired and hungry. Back in the hospital, his assistant informs their mother that he found out her daughter is pregnant by her fiancé, which is why he married her. She reveals that she has known this for a while. The assistant is surprised and she tells him that he is not her only source of information. At home, the maid goes to her again and she asks if anyone has come for her. The maid tells her no one has come and asks her to follow her. Surprised, she follows the maid and finds that she has prepared a jacuzzi for her. She loses her temper and tells the maid that everyone in this house must be crazy. She refuses to bathe and says she will stay in her current state until they let her out. When she tries to leave, one of his men blocks her, so she reluctantly enters the bathroom and locks the door with a mop to ensure no one can open it. When their mother returns home, she finds the head housekeeper has returned to work. Turns out she is the head of the servants, scolding them for not cleaning the house properly. When the head housekeeper sees their mother, she goes to her and hugs her. Their mother is surprised that she left her father's mourning to return to work, especially since he just passed away yesterday. The head housekeeper explains that she was forced forced to attend the funeral and burial against her will because she deeply hates her father for abandoning her in the streets and leaving her alone in the world. Meanwhile, he is sitting, looking at photos of her on his mobile phone, feeling sad and thinking of sending her a message. However, he hesitates and eventually decides against it. Suddenly, his wife stands behind him, offering him her phone to talk to the woman he was supposed to marry. He is surprised by her statement, thinking she is testing him, but she clarifies that it's not a test and that everyone has the right to know why they were left. He scoffs at her remarks, questioning when her conscience awakened. She tells him that she is not stupid, understands everything happening around her, and is sure that he married her only because he was afraid of her brother, not because he cares about her or their unborn child. She does not expect him to love her, especially since her own mother, who gave birth to her, didn't love her and hated her, abandoning her when she was young. He is shocked by her story. She then asks him to be a kind and caring father to their child, hoping the child will grow up feeling loved by both parents. Unlike her own childhood, he decides to tell her that he too was raised in an orphanage without parents. Meanwhile, she is still in the bathroom, and everyone is gathered outside the bathroom door trying to open it because the steam from the hot water is filling the room, posing a risk of her suffocating. Despite this, she insists on not opening the door. At that moment, he arrives and knocks on the door, asking her to open it, but she refuses. He decides to break down the door, and she warns him not to come closer, threatening to kill herself if he does. She tells him that it seems his pride is hurt, noting that it might be the first time a woman has rejected him. She breaks down, shouting loudly, telling him that no one could ever love someone who is a killer, and as heartless as he is, someone who surely cannot feel or love. Suddenly, she faints, and he, now worried, takes her to her room to rest. The maid stays with her to care for her, but he asks the maid to take a break and says he will stay with her. At the same time, his assistant goes to their mother, informing her that her daughter is adamant about going to the police. He asks when they will act to free her from him. Their mother tells him that they will not go anywhere, which greatly surprises the assistant. She gets annoyed with his questioning and reminds him that his only role is to follow her orders. Her son overhears everything and is shocked by his mother's incomprehensible scheming. Suddenly, her daughter comes out, and he asks where she is going. She tells him she is going to him to rescue her friend and help her. He tries to calm her down and prevents her from rushing off, reassuring her that her friend will be all right because it's clear that he truly loves her. This is why their mother isn't worried about her. He promises that the next morning he will speak with him to negotiate regarding her friend, assuring her that their mother will not know about their secret plan, making it a secret between them. At that time, he is sitting next to her, looking at her with love and tenderness. While she is asleep, he talks to her, telling her that his heart breaks every time he sees her sad and crying. He explains that everything he does is against his will, and he promises to make up for every moment she felt sad because of him. Then, he notices a distinctive mark on her hands. This reminds him of his childhood when he went to his mother's house with his sister because she wanted to check on her and see her. He had escorted her to the palace and let her enter while he stood at a distance, looking sadly at his mother as she doted on his brother. He left the house crying. She saw him then. She came out to give him some of her food to cheer him up, and that's when he noticed the distinctive mark on her hands. Shortly after, his sister came out crying because the guards had thrown her out. He tried to comfort her and gave her the food in his hand, explaining that their mother had sent it to them so his sister would stop crying and be happy. At that moment, he looked at her from a distance and promised himself never to forget her kindness during his time of sadness. He snaps out of his memories, amazed by fate and God's wisdom that after all these years, he is reunited with her. Meanwhile, she wakes up and is startled to see him in front of her. She asks him to stay away from her. He inquires if she is hungry, but she doesn't respond. He decides to ring the bell for the servants to prepare food. She insists that she won't eat anything from his house, telling him that she is tired of his treatment and his evil nature. He reluctantly picks her up and takes her to the dining table against her will. When she sees the servants sitting at the table waiting for them, she feels embarrassed by them and is surprised that he, who she considers cruel and insane, treats his servants as if they were family. At that moment, he asks the servants to dine elsewhere that night and forces her to sit at the table. Losing her temper, she throws the food onto the floor, which greatly upsets and angers him. He warns her that the house has two rules. The first is that he will never pity anyone who does not respect God's blessings, and the second is that she must pick up any food she drops and eat it. She is taken aback by his request and tells him she will never eat anything off the floor. He remarks that if she knew how poor people sometimes have to eat even from trash, she would think twice before disrespecting food. Defiantly, she tells him she will not eat from the floor, no matter what happens. He becomes even more infuriated and calls his confidant to take her back to her place, instructing him that she will not eat anything but shakshuka so she can try throwing it on the floor again. The next morning, the maid calls the hospital to check on the condition of her father. Another maid overhears her and is surprised that she knows him. She approaches and asks how she knows the father of the girl who is locked up. The maid becomes nervous at this and lies to her, saying she was just checking on him because he had fainted visit at their house, nothing more. Meanwhile, his confidant sits with him and talks to him about needing to sit down with her and explain the truth, what's happened. He advises him to tell her that he did not kill her fiancé as she thinks, that her father is in the hospital being treated, that he never ordered his men to hurt him. They acted on their own. He has severely punished them for what they did. Just then, one of his men arrives and informs him that the son of their mother has come asking to meet him. He is shocked by this. At the same time, she is looking at the items he purchased for her and is surprised that he knew her clothing and shoe sizes. She then sees the son of their mother entering the house from the window and is overjoyed, trying to call out to him, but he does not hear her. Later, he meets the son of their mother, who asks him to let her go. He tells him that she is staying there of her own will and no one is stopping her from leaving. The son of their mother is perplexed by his response and says that it's impossible. He then challenges him to compete in anything to prove whether he deserves to take her with him as he leaves. The son of their mother is irritated by his words and tells him that he has faced much belittlement and bullying since childhood due to being in a wheelchair. He's not surprised that now he is trying to do the same to him. But it's not strong or manly to stand just to humiliate someone who can't stand, making him feel more handicapped. Feeling that he has deeply hurt the son of their mother, he brings a chair and sits down, and the son of their mother suggests they play chess, a game suited to his condition for a fair competition. He agrees to the suggestion. They set up the chess game and sit opposite each other. He tells the son of their mother that if he wins, he will leave with her. The son of their mother agrees. They begin their game. Meanwhile, her friend goes to their mother, visibly tense and worried, telling her that the son of their mother has gone to speak to him about bringing her back, but now she can't reach him on his phone. Their mother is shocked by this, and they quickly get in the car with his assistant and head to his house. During the game, he manages to defeat the son of their mother in chess. After the game, the son of their mother leaves sadly because he had hoped to take her back with him. After arriving at his house, their mother is received by his confidant. As she enters through the gate, she encounters him and looks at him with hatred and anger. He tells her that she gave birth to him, but he is nothing like her. He reassures her that her son, whom she came worried about, has already left unharmed and no one touched a hair on his head. She then decides to provoke him, telling him that nobody will ever love him, no matter how wealthy and influential he becomes. She asserts that he will never be like her lover, her husband, and the father of her child, whom she still adores and whose strength came from her love for him. In contrast, he lives alone, without love, and nobody will ever be able to love him. She reminds him that he took from her the thing she loved most in her life when he killed her lover, and therefore she will never forgive him or feel any affection or love for him. Even the girl he is currently holding captive will never love him. She warns him not to test her patience or force her to do things she does not want to do. She asks to see the girl to prevent any more problems, and he allows her only 2 minutes. After their mother walks away with his confidant, he is left devastated and deeply saddened. When their mother first sees her, she tells her that she cannot get her out of there because he is a wicked man. Because of him, her father is currently in the hospital, and he burned down their house and the sewing workshop, so she would have nowhere else to go after this. She is shocked by all this information. At that moment, their mother hands her a red handkerchief, walks away. Before their mother gets into her car, he tells her that she should realize she is his enemy, not his mother, because to him, she is dead and non-existent. She reassures him that he is also her enemy and that she will never forgive him. Then he goes to her, finding her devastated by what their mother had told her. In a state of despair, she opens her clothing and stands naked in front of him, telling him that if he is waiting to take her honor and leave her afterward, he should go ahead. He is shocked by the state she has reached, and he covers her body without looking at her, buttoning up her clothes. She is surprised that he is even protective of her from his own gaze. He then asks her to walk with him, and he takes her to another room far from the basement. This new room is in the main house, next to his room and the servants. The maid has prepared the room for her, letting her know that if she needs anything, she is there to help. Later, she talks to him, begging and pleading to let her go see her father, just to make sure he is okay, promising to return with him afterward. She tells him she is ready to beg and kneel if he wants. He is disturbed by this and tells her that she will not beg or kneel to anyone else. He explains that if he lets her see her father, they will take her away from him, and he will never allow that to happen. He leaves her in the room. She sits down sadly, looking at what is inside the handkerchief their mother gave her, finding a small gun. After returning home, their mother rushes to her son, speaking to him worriedly, telling him she was terrified for him. He reassures her that his interaction with him was polite and civilized, not beastly or evil as others say. Their mother is shocked by this and accuses him of being deceived, but her son reveals their bears a secret, as it's impossible for the man he met today to be capable of burning houses and ruining lives. He starts to doubt his mother's motives and asks her why she hates him so much. Meanwhile, her daughter arrives, and she is surprised that her sister isn't with their mother. She is told that her sister chose not to return because she has fallen in love with him. Her daughter is shocked by this revelation, dismissing it as a joke and asserting that if her sister knew what had happened to their father, she would have returned immediately. Their mother responds that her daughter is aware of their father's condition in intensive care, yet she chose to stay with him, which leaves her daughter even more astonished, struggling to comprehend what's being said. Meanwhile, her sister sits in her room, reflecting sadly on memories with her father and sister. She decides to escape and go to her father by any means necessary. She looks at the candles in her room and decides to start a fire. She takes a candle and throws it onto her bed, igniting a fire that quickly engulfs the room. She runs to the balcony and tries to escape by jumping off, but she lands harshly on her legs and injures herself. At the same time, he sits with his confidant, expressing sadness because he always thought her brother would be like their mother and her lover, cruel and merciless. However, he turned out to be the exact opposite. Her daughter decides to go to the police station to report him for kidnapping and torturing her sister. She files a report stating these allegations. At that moment, his assistant informs their mother that her daughter has gone to the police station and filed a complaint against him, which infuriates her. Simultaneously, the maid smells smoke coming from her sister's room. She and the guard break down the door, and they inform him that her room is on fire. He's terrified and rushes to her room, breaking down the door with all his might, only to find that she has escaped. Her sister is outside in the garden, trying to escape through the gates. She keeps running until she collapses, her legs in severe pain. He searches everywhere for her, and after much effort, he finds her. As he approaches to calm her down, she pulls out the gun their mother gave her, threatening him not to come closer or she would kill him. In that moment, driven by desperation, she shoots him, shocked by her own actions. After she collapses from the pain in her legs, he, despite being injured, picks her up and brings her back home. He applies painkillers and ointment to her legs, and then takes her hands and places them against his chest to press on the wound and stop the bleeding. She decides to help him just as he had helped her. He asks her where she got the weapon, which makes her nervous and tense. Suddenly, she finds him closing his eyes and not speaking, which frights her, thinking something bad has happened to him. Meanwhile, another woman arrives at his house with the police, but the servants greet them as if nothing has happened. They inform them that they are alone in the house and that the police cannot enter to search without a warrant from the prosecutor. The woman becomes agitated and collapses emotionally, and the police try to calm her down. They inform her that the law does not allow them to search the house without a warrant, and the police ask her to leave the premises with them. She then seeks help from the servants, telling them that he is injured and needs urgent help. Another maid argues with her, convinced that she was the one who harmed him, and instructs the guards to detain her. When the woman returns home, her mother argues with her for acting independently without consulting her and walks away. Suddenly, her brother talks to the woman and reveals that there is a secret their mother has kept hidden, asserting that it's impossible for her to be staying willingly with him. Their mother is distressed by what she hears. At that time, the doctor arrives for him, and along with his confidant, they tell him that he needs to go to the hospital because he requires a blood transfusion due to significant blood loss. However, he adamantly refuses to go to the hospital, insisting on being treated at home. The doctor is intimidated by his insistence and decides to treat him at home as requested. Later, another maid visits her with clean clothes and something hot to drink to calm her. She angrily tells the maid that she neither wants to drink anything nor wear different clothes. All she wants is to leave. The maid tells her that he will decide that and questions why she did escape while he was unconscious. She responds that she isn't heartless like him and couldn't leave someone to die, no matter who they are. The maid replies that he isn't a bad person either, which makes her laugh sarcastically. The maid insists that she will understand everything in time. At night, another man is out with his partner, trying to fulfill any wish she has to spare himself from his punishment. However, he notices that his partner is kind-hearted and compassionate, observing her as she cares for street children and brings them food, visibly happy and content. He feels that she doesn't deserve to be unhappy. The doctor treats him after removing the bullet, and once he sees her, he informs her that he will punish her for what she did. She asks him to call the police because she feels imprisonment would be better than staying with him. However, he tells her that she isn't going anywhere else. Her punishment will be at his house. He asks his confidants to leave them alone and warns that even if he is dying, they should not enter because she will be the one to take care of him, which he deems a fitting punishment for her. After they leave, she tells him that she will not take care of him or attend to him. He replies that if he dies, it will be her fault. She must take responsibility for her actions. She angrily tells him that even if it is her last day on Earth, she will not care for him. Later, as he sleeps, he starts to hallucinate and calls out for his mother. She hears him, approaches, and feels pity for him. Finding his fever very high, she begins to cry and starts taking care of him, applying cold compresses to reduce his fever. The next morning, he wakes to find her sleeping on the couch next to him. Realizing she had cared for him all night. His confidant gives him the gun that was with her, and they decide to find out who owns it. Meanwhile, another character tries to contact their mother, but is told by her office that she hasn't arrived yet, which frustrates him. He finds another character, and she informs him that his phone is being monitored by him. He grows more frustrated and expresses his exhaustion with his life, wishing to go out alone and feel free. She tells him the car keys are in front of him, and he can leave anytime. He takes the keys and leaves. That night, he is at a business dinner with new clients. Soon after, their mother arrives at the same venue and accuses him of unethically stealing clients, warning him that if he reaches out for anything that belongs to her, she will break his hands. She approaches the clients to persuade them to return to her services, but the clients surprise her by saying his offer was much more competitive than hers, providing better terms than she offered. At that moment, Zafar Behelevan decides to tell the clients that Gulcemal has kidnapped Diva and is misleading them by claiming that she will work for him. She explains that Diva is not only her personal designer, but also her spiritual daughter, whom she has raised. Gulcemal responds by inviting the clients to his home the next day to see Diva for themselves and confirm that she will be working with him and that their business is safe. Wafa is shocked and worried because Diva would never side with Gulcemal willingly. The next morning, Gulcemal visits Diva first thing after she wakes up to continue caring for his wound. She asks him how he killed her fiancé, and he reveals that he did not kill him. Surprised, she realizes that Gulcemal had lied to her and that Mart is still alive, wondering why he hasn't tried to reach her. At that moment, Jara enters with breakfast. When Diva tries to eat, Gulcemal only allows her to eat shakshuka, which distresses her. She explains that she can't eat shakshuka because it was the last meal her mother made before she died, and since then, she hasn't been able to eat it again. Meanwhile, Mart is sitting in a restaurant calling someone named Khalid, who works for Zafar Behelevan. He learns from Khalid that Diva is missing and rumored to be staying with a wealthy man, and that her father is in the hospital in critical condition. Mart is shocked by this news. At the same time, Diva tries to talk to Jara, explaining that she is not a bad person and only needs her help to reassure her sister, who must be very worried about her. Jara says it's difficult, but mentions that she checks on her father every day and will try to let her reassure herself directly. Diva is relieved and hugs Jara in gratitude. Jara then calls the hospital to check on Diva's father, but suddenly, Gulcemal and Wafa enter the room, startling her and causing her to end the call abruptly. At that moment, Diva notices an envelope with Julendam's name on it. Gulcemal enters and asks her to follow him without questions. When they leave the house, he pulls out a gun from his pocket, deciding to teach Diva how to aim and protect herself in dangerous situations. Diva is initially perplexed by his actions, but soon feels happy and learns quickly. Just then, Armin arrives to see Gulcemal again and is surprised to see Diva happy and laughing. He decides to leave, but just as he does, Diva points the gun at Gulcemal, telling him that once she learns to aim, he will be her first target. Gulcemal then tells her that Italian clients are coming the next day, and he needs her to tell them she will work with him. Diva asserts that it's impossible and walks away, leaving him behind. Wafa comes to Gulcemal, informing him that Arman has been waiting for a while. When Gulcemal goes to meet Arman, Arman wants to understand his relationship with his mother. Gulcemal tells him that he doesn't yet know his mother well, but promises that he will understand her reality tomorrow. Meanwhile, Abek is at the hospital because her father has awakened. She wants to reassure him. He asks about Diva, and Ibek assures him that they are fine. Right then, Mart calls her. Ibek steps outside to talk to him and is furious because he dared to call after abandoning Diva and fleeing on their wedding day. Arman then arrives at the hospital and tells Ibek what he saw. He informs her that he saw Diva not imprisoned but happy, and even learning how to handle a weapon, which shocks Ibek. During this time, Jara informs Diva that her father has been moved out of intensive care and is improving. Diva is overjoyed and thanks Jara. Later, Gulcemal calls Mart and warns him that he is aware of all his movements and calls. He tells Mart that his patience is running out and that if Mart fails to make his sister happy, he will face dire consequences. Mart gets angry, throws the phone on the ground, and suddenly sees Julendam in front of him. He breaks down and yells at her, admitting that he cannot pretend anymore. Julendam reassures him that she will help him escape because she does not want to live the life her mother forced upon her when she abandoned them because she did not love them or their father. That evening, Gulcemal asks Diva to get dressed and prepare for dinner. Diva initially refuses to attend the dinner, but Gulcemal warns her that if she is not dressed within 3 minutes, he will dress her himself. Reluctantly, Diva gets dressed and meets him. He has prepared a sitting area in the garden for the dinner. However, she refuses to eat with him. When Gulcemal receives a phone call and steps away, Diva seizes the opportunity to eat voraciously due to her hunger. Gulcemal sees her from the window, returns to the dinner table, and notices her happiness when she sees a shooting star. He explains to her that stars are tied to fate and that astrologers work on this belief because humans always want to know their future. Diva is surprised to find find Gulcemal knowledgeable and remarks that even if wishes made on stars could come true, hers would still be impossible. When Gulcemal asks about her wish, she says it is to see her father. He decides to fulfill this wish for her, and Diva is incredulous but overjoyed that she will finally see her father. Meanwhile, Jara is at the hospital with Khalil Ibrahim, who is shocked to see her because he thought she was dead. We learn that her real name is Feruza,